Okay, I know that y'all probably saw this Washington Post story. Women are getting off birth control amid misinformation explosion by Lauren Weber, not sure how to pronounce her last name. Birth control is something that we've been talking about on this show since 2019 or maybe beginning of 2020. What birth control is, hormonal birth control, what it does to your body, how there is an abortifacient um, aspect to it. There's the possibility always of birth control actually making your uterus inhospitable to an already fertilized egg, which is ethically and morally problematic for those of us who believe that life starts at conception, life starts at the point of fertilization. And so I think a lot of women have started to think more thoroughly about hormonal birth control, whether they ethically align with it and what it's actually been doing to their bodies. And the Washington Post, of course, is very upset about this. So here's what they say. Search for birth control on TikTok or Instagram, and a cascade of misleading videos vilifying hormonal contraception appear. Young women blaming their weight gain on the pill, right-wing commentators claiming that some birth control can lead to infertility, testimonials complaining of depression and anxiety. Physicians say they're seeing an explosion of birth control misinformation online targeting a vulnerable demographic, people in their teens and early 20s, who are more likely to believe that what they see on their phones because of algorithms that feed them a stream of videos reinforcing messages often divorced from scientific evidence. Of course, one of the doctors that they're talking about, or that they're talking to about all of this misinformation, will put his picture up on YouTube, and you can tell me, women, whether you would trust this person with your body. Do you trust this person to tell you about birth control? He's got this little sign that says facts are important. Facts are important. And I guarantee you he probably has his pronouns in his profile. He's got a little rainbow flag there waving behind him. I mean, just stare deep into this person's soul and tell me whether or not you give a flying rip about what he's got to say about what birth control does for your body. He says people are putting themselves out there as experts on birth control and speaking on things that the science does not bear out. I am seeing the direct failures of this misinformation. Physicians and researchers say little data, this is what the article says, say little data is available about the scale of this new phenomenon, but anecdotally, more patients are coming in with misconceptions about birth control fueled by influencers and conservative commentators. I will just say, I was totally snubbed here. I was totally snubbed that I was not included in this article because we were way ahead of the curve when it comes to who was talking about birth control and the dangers of all of this stuff. I will just say, but that's okay. We'll keep going. Prominent conservative commentators have seized upon mistrust of medical professionals, sowing misinformation as a way to discourage the use of birth control. Brett Cooper gives an example of the Daily Wire. A media commentator says that argued in a viral TikTok clip that birth control can impact fertility, cause women to gain weight, and even alter whom they are attracted to. They list other people like Candace Owens, Brittany Martinez, founder of EV Magazine. And Brittany said women have been silenced and shamed by legacy media, the pharmaceutical industry, and in many cases by their own doctors who have gaslit them. And so this person is discrediting all of this, saying that this is just viral misinformation. This is all just manipulation tactics to, I don't even know what the intent would be. What would the intent behind this be? To try to get women to accidentally get pregnant? I guess they're trying to say that, I don't know, these influencers really believe what they're saying, but it's just the wrong information. And unfortunately, they're convincing other people of their lies. All forms of medication, including hormonal birth control, can have side effects. Of course, this is true. This is exactly what these influencers are saying, and this journalist is admitting that. Some are rare but serious. Birth control pills that contain estrogen can lead to blood clots and strokes. IUDs can perforate the uterine wall. And then the article describes a 24-year-old who was surprisingly diagnosed with blood clots in her leg and both lungs caused by her birth control. The Food and Drug Administration points out that the risk of developing blood clots from using birth control pills remains lower than the risk of developing blood clots in pregnancy and in the postpartum period. Okay. What relation does that have? I guess you're trying to say, look, this is better than getting pregnant because your likelihood of having blood clots is actually lower than that. But there are still risks there. And many women are put on birth control not because they're having sex, not because they're trying not to get pregnant. Women are put on birth control basically like they're given Tic Tacs, told this will clear up your acne, this will regulate your period. It doesn't regulate your period because you don't have a period on birth control. That's not a period. That's a withdrawal bleed. It's not an actual period. And so your body isn't going through the cycle that God made it to go through every month. Of course, there are going to be effects on your mind, on your body when you mess with that natural cycle. Now, I understand there are also some benefits that some people say that they get from birth control. They say that it helps with your endometriosis symptoms. I want to be clear about that. Birth control doesn't fix anything. It's not healing you. It might manage your symptoms, and that could be very helpful for people. And I'm not denying that, but it's not actually fixing anything, and it can actually cause real problems. But it is not going to get to the root cause of your pre-existing problems. They talk about the effects that this has had via social media. Talks about, women who are having unplanned pregnancies because of this, but they don't actually discredit anything that any of these commentators are saying. In fact, they admit that some of these side effects are real. They might say that they're rare, but they are in fact real. This is a tactic that you see a lot in the media to say there's no evidence saying that. But saying there's no evidence of something does not mean that there's evidence proving that there's not. So they might say there's no evidence to show that birth control can cause depression. Okay, maybe there aren't studies done on that, although I believe that there are. But say that there aren't studies done by that. That just means that that study hasn't gotten the funding. Big Pharma probably doesn't want a study like that being out there. That doesn't mean that it's not true. That doesn't mean that there is evidence discrediting that. I mean, when enough women say this, and this was so common when I was in college, women saying, oh, my birth control pill is making me crazy, or my dermatologist put me on a birth control pill and I'm just getting used to it, or oh my gosh, well, I can't lose weight right now because I just switched birth control pills. I mean, this happened to so many of my friends when a doctor in high school who probably just assumed that everyone was having sex secretly and wanted to make sure that they didn't get pregnant at 16 just put them on birth control, really for no health reasons. She would say, oh yeah, it's to regulate your period because, I don't know, at the age of 15, someone missed their period for some reason. So she would use that as an excuse to put people on the birth control pill. And it caused, in some cases, years of problems for these girls who were still developing at this time, to mess with the natural cycle, to mess with hormones, especially when a young woman is still developing. Just because you think that you're being a hero and possibly preventing an unwanted pregnancy, it is absolutely evil. So it is a great thing that women are waking up to this, that women are realizing that what we put in our bodies actually matters. It actually makes a big difference, and that it can be detrimental to us, even though we have been gaslit by our doctors for so many years into believing that it has no negative effects whatsoever. This is a good thing. And the people at the Washington Post, who probably have a pretty cozy relationship with the pharmaceutical companies, they just don't like this. So just some fact checking. Studies have shown that the pill does in fact change the pheromones emitted by a woman's body. It can influence how partners are chosen, according to a 2018 study published in the National Library of Medicine. So we've talked about this before. We have talked about how women who are on the birth control pill are actually more likely to have bisexual feelings and to be attracted to more effeminate men than women who are not on the birth control pill. That's pretty wild and kind of scary. A 2008 study also found a correlation between birth control and women's taste in men. A 2013 study from Psychoneuroendocrinology found initiation of birth control pill use significantly decreased women's preferences for male facial masculinity, but did not influence preferences for same sex faces. So the study says, interesting. Interesting. According to the Mayo Clinic, weight gain, breakthrough bleeding, headaches, nausea, elevated blood pressure, and bloating are common side effects of combination birth control pills, which contain both estrogen and progestin. The pill can also increase the risk of blood clots, heart attacks, and other health issues. Of course, it increases, you can find this anywhere, increases the likelihood of breast cancer as well. And these are all things that most women are not told by their doctors. They're not given a list of side effects. They're not told, okay, you should be careful about this. They're just given the pill, saying, this will clear up your acne. So the Washington Post made no mention of these psychological effects on birth control that, as I said, women have reported many times. But a 2016 study published in JAMA Psychiatry looked at over 1 million Danish women over age 14 and found all forms of hormonal contraception were associated with an increased risk of developing depression, with higher risks associated with the progesterone-only depression or forms, including the IUD. This risk was higher in teens ages 15 to 19, and especially for non-oral forms of birth control, such as the ring, patch, and the IUD. Dr. Sarah Hill, professor of social psychology at TCU, wrote a book, How the Pill Changes Everything, Your Brain on Birth Control. She said she's not against it, but that her research has shown that birth control has had a huge impact on women's relationships and sexual affection, as well as stress responses. She describes how the pill affects women's brains. The pill works by mimicking the second half of a woman's monthly ovulatory cycle using artificial progesterone, which shuts down the brain signal and prompts egg development. This also means the ovaries aren't producing estrogen, the hormone that dominates the first half of a woman's natural cycle and contributes to a woman's feeling of libido and energy. While most pills use some synthetic estrogen primarily to offset progestin's unpleasant side effects, women can still feel the lack. She did an interview in 2019 on the Today Show where she said pill use prior to the finalization of brain development influences women's brain health long term. So these doctors that are putting these teenagers on birth control pills because they think that they're doing something valiant, you are actually messing them up for the rest of their lives. Like I told you about my friends and I who all happen to see the same doctor. None of us were having sex. And yet for all different reasons, for a missed period, for acne, for cramps, she would just put us on Yaz. And now you see the commercials. Were you affected by Yaz? Did you develop cancer? I mean, it's crazy. And were our parents told about any of these side effects? No. And that was back in the day where you just listen to your doctor and you kind of have white coat syndrome and you just assume that they're always right. Now, thank the Lord, I realized very early on that I didn't want to do this anymore, that there was no reason for me to be on birth control. And so after a few years, I stopped and I was like, I don't need that. I remember being afraid that I was going to get acne, that like everything, I don't know. I just thought that everything was going to be horrible, but I got off birth control and I was fine. Now, that's not the case for some women. Some women get off birth control when they're married, they're ready to have kids, and then it takes them forever to get pregnant, or they can't get pregnant at all. Their body doesn't even know how to have a natural cycle anymore, and so it's got to learn for several months how to do that again. And we're just told that this is all worth it. It's all well and good. It's all fine. I remember also when I was in high school and I started this, I just remembered this, and this is a very common story. I remember I would wake up in the middle of the night, so sad, I was scared, and it was just random. I'm remembering that because I remember talking to my mom about that, and I remember this girl in college who was on my hall freshman year who told me, "Oh, I'm on this new form of birth control, and I just can't stop crying. I keep getting in fights with my boyfriend about it, about her moodiness, her mood swings. This is ruining people's lives, ruining people's lives." And Washington Post is mad about this. Of course they are. Of course they are, because they're always on the side of pharma. They're always on the side of less control. It's so interesting that these same people who say my body, my choice, and bodily autonomy, and women's rights, and women taking charge, they are against women taking charge of their bodies when it comes to understanding the negative effects of the hormonal birth control pill? What? It's crazy. It's crazy. Get off the pill. Get off the pill. Now, I know I'm going to hear from some of you who say it changed your life because you had debilitating cramps or whatever. Look, I'm not denying that. I would just say, I would suggest as a non medical professional that you go to a functional medicine doctor and you get to the root cause of those issues. What is causing those debilitating cramps? What is causing the symptoms that you are having? Because again, the birth control might be masking those symptoms, but they are not fixing it. They're not fixing it. And so I know that we're not allowed to talk about root causes. We're not allowed to talk about alternative medicine. We're not allowed to talk about anything other than what the pharmaceutical companies approve. But if we care about our body, if we care about our long-term health, if we care about our daughters, if we care about our ability to have children, all of those things, then we have to care, of course, with what is going into our bodies. And of course, we didn't even discuss that much, again, that abortifacient aspect of it. You really need to consider that. If you are married and you're having regular sex and you're on this birth control pill, there is a possibility that that birth control pill is causing an abortion. And so it's something to, I think, correct in your life. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and there's lots of conversations I know that we haven't had yet really on this podcast about other forms of birth control. Like, when is that okay biblically? When is it okay to stop having children? I get this question a lot, what I think about vasectomies and all of that. And we'll have to do an episode dedicated to that specifically, because that's a little bit, it's a big topic, it's a complex topic, but it's also a sensitive topic. So I want to make sure that I approach that with care. But yeah, get off the birth control pill.